Hi, I'm Steve Carlson. In 2016, we need the vision of independent voters, the new majority, whose involvement is badly needed to save the country and the Supreme Court. And so I'm going to list three of the issues which you'll find among independent candidates and independent voters, I believe. You'll get none of this from the Democrat Party or the Democratic National Convention in Philadelphia in 2016 in the summer here. First, the sanctity of the vote and the purity of federal election process in Minnesota and all the caucus states. I'm talking about your vote being undiluted, one person, one vote. Second, saving America's future by fiscal sanity, sending the power and tax base back to the 50 states, cutting Washington down to the size of the U.S. Constitution, and giving a greater leadership role in each of your states. Third, ways we can bring America's economy roaring back, and I don't mean just by leaving jobs in the economy in the hands of individual stockholders and investors, but by bringing back a great environment for business by voting to increase jobs and GDP, gross domestic product, or productivity. Now, how do we do this? Well, first of all, the people in the 50 states are sinking under the load of usurious interest rates under the National Bank Act, a federal burden on the states' economies. This is how we can create millions of jobs, by acting to level the playing field for state and community banks against the big Wall Street banks. You never hear this from Elizabeth Warren or Bernie Sanders for some reason, but it is the single best way to break up the big Wall Street banks who are loading up by selling consumer credit cards at usurious rates while our states are rendered powerless to act by a 1978 Supreme Court case. Next, unleashing higher education through land grant, technology, and collective bargaining for tuition, under a law that tuition must, when possible, be without charge. I have a separate video on this. It shows this is not socialism. This is hardwired into Minnesota's Constitution from even the time before it became a state. And we can do land grants all over the country with all that federal land sitting around the West. Can you imagine how that could help to develop that part of the country? Next, by developing the Mexican border as an asset of both countries, Mexico and the United States, as an engine of jobs and GDP growth. Next, transitioning the power and resources back to your state, which will empower your state to get the best results for any money spent. Now, the Washington elite is incapable of doing this. But recently I saw that somebody was going to vote for Donald Trump because they felt that he was capable of definitive action. Definitive action is what independent voters are looking for. We're not looking for the party line. We're not looking for planks in the platform, which is going to be set aside while they gear up for the next election and all of the hundreds of millions of dollars, billions of dollars that they're now going to spend and paying these media to corrupt the media and to silence them so that the independent voters of the United States cannot associate to govern themselves under a Republican form of government. Now, if you're going to caucus for Hillary Clinton or Bernie Sanders, you have a big surprise waiting for you when you arrive at your caucus in your precinct. There's going to be caucuses controlled by party cadre who are going to check you for your identity. They're going to determine whether you're a woman or a man. And if you're a man, you're not a priority. Your votes are limited, so you can't be a majority. They're going to check to see if you're a minority or whether you're white. And if you're white, you're not a priority. Your votes are limited and abridged by law. They're going to check to see if you're straight, heterosexual, or if you're a homosexual or lesbian. If you're straight, you're not a priority to be seated as a delegate. These are hardwired into the laws of the state of Minnesota and into the DFL Constitution in Minnesota and also in all 50 states through the DNC delegate selection requirements for Philadelphia in 2016. So these are delegate voting quotas. These are hardwired quotas. They're proportional representation. If any state does not follow this, if any region or precinct does not follow this, that delegation can be rejected by the Democrats. So independent is really much better. Right now, 53%, according to the NBC July 2015 poll, 53% of the voters starting out were independent. And here's how I reached that figure. Because first, 45% were straight up independent, compared to 32% for the Democratic Party and just 23% for the Republican Party, according to Pew Research, who says of independents, this is the highest percentage of independents in more than 75 years of public opinion polling. So 45% independent, and yet another 8% identified with a third party or small party. And so this is a quote from NBC commentator Chuck Todd. The largest political party in the United States is no longer a political party at all, he said. He said this on seeing this data. Now, when you add those who have rejected the Democrats or Republicans with the straight-up independents, we're the new majority because we have 53%. And yet the caucus you're thinking of attending is designed to take away your voice as the majority and to put the ballot in the hands totally of the Democratic Party or the Republican Party in some states. And now you're quoted out of your sacred right to vote. And so if you walk into that Democratic caucus and you submit to the Hillary Clinton gender quota system, which Bernie Sanders also uses because Democratic women can also vote socialist. And so he's trying to compete within the gender quota system, which biologically favors Hillary Clinton, but can also play to Bernie Sanders' idea of being the first socialist president. Then you're going to give up your independent mind, your independent responsibility under the Constitution to enable a Republican form of government by selecting your representative or senator or your next president. And so I'd like you to think long and hard about this. Now, the Democratic Party doesn't seem to care about usury that is holding us back from making the economies in the 50 states come roaring back. If more credit is available in the states, because state and community banks have an even playing field, because national banks, the Wall Street banks, will have to comply with each state's usury law, a law that binds only state and community banks, but outside banks don't have to comply under that Supreme Court case from 1978. Well, then therefore they're charging exorbitant interest rates. But if more credit is available, more access to affordable credit will grow jobs. And tens of millions of households in each state can refinance to reasonable rates and payments, so they can now afford to buy more goods and services they need. And that will create jobs, more jobs in your state. And with the repatriation of overseas corporate assets, which right now total about $4 trillion, I believe, of which if we got back $2 trillion to inject into the economy on a one-time basis, this would be a boost to bring America roaring back. America's economy roaring back, and there's much more that's needed. And I give credit to Donald Trump for coming up with a good plan to get a one-time only repatriation of trillions of dollars back into our economy. That's going to make a tremendous difference. It's going to be a lot better than the Federal Reserve pumping money into loans by artificially suppressing the effective interest rate to banks to 0%. Another thing we need to do for the economy is to take the regulatory and tax burden off of those who might take the risk to invest, to create jobs by creating new enterprise or expanding existing enterprise to create jobs. So when I say take the burden off, I'm talking about that heavy burden. Of course, we need intelligent regulation. We need intelligent, responsible action by corporations, of course. And, of course, some taxes have to be paid. But when people are not able to create jobs to get money, they're not going to have that money to pay in taxes. And so this is a kind of a growth strategy. And with the proper education and the proper motivation and leadership and this one-time expansion of opportunity for enterprise by repatriating overseas cash, you could get a good job and participate in a winning enterprise that works for you, works for the customer, and helps provide strong leadership for this country, whether you're a worker or whether you're a CEO. This is the kind of opportunity that is going to bring America roaring back. You won't find any plans to bring the U.S. economy roaring back from Hillary Clinton, because the Democrats think it's already great. Obama's great, they say. Hillary Clinton's slogan is, "We don't need to make America great again, because America was already great." Well, if you believe that, you're going to walk in and sign up to caucus for Hillary Clinton. That's if you can. Because if you're a man, or if you're white, or if you're straight, if you don't believe in homosexuality, then there may not be a spot for you, because the Democrats have a certain amount of spots reserved to exclude white, straight males. And so the party is completely taken out of the control of the voters who just want to make America work right now. We can make America work right now because there's enough of America left that it can work. But the Democrats want to engineer a new history in which the old America doesn't work anymore. They want to pull the plug on the old America, and you might not want to caucus with them. So what I would ask you to do is to support independent leadership, independent parties, if you have one, or to otherwise associate yourself to create policy positions and leadership that will save America in this election. So somehow come together, support an independent candidate, and keep that independent vision alive. Now when you look at this caucus, Democratic caucus, you can look at the results. It will be unconstitutionally, socially engineered results, excluding whites, males, and straight voters. So their odd alliance, their so-called new history, is hardwired into the federal government. They'll try to ram down your throat in 2016. This must be stopped. Don't help them. Help us make America work again. Make it great again. Today, there are precinct caucuses where they screen out whites and males and those who don't practice homosexuality or lesbianism. Next month, they'll move up and start endorsing the candidates who will appear on the general election ballot, determine who they're going to endorse, and there will be a primary in Minnesota for everything except president, because the political elites, the ones you elected to your state legislature, have protected that decision as a reward for the party activists and elites, and in the case of the Democrats, for the superdelegates, further protecting this vital decision from you and even party activists. I hope you'll carefully consider these reasons before you become part of a corrupt Democrat Party caucus proceeding. Remember your country and your duty to keep us free and with a Republican form of government. I'm Steve Carlson. I'm running for president in 2016 as an independent under Independence 2016. And I thank you for listening, and I approve this message.